Good morning, everyone. This is Mortgage Pros 411. I'm Audrey Boyce-Snow with Kevin Casey, and today we are joined by James Kleimann. How are you this morning, James?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking.
Good. So James was most recently with HousingWire magazine, where he was a reporter on the beat, covering things mortgage related. And now you've got something called the Mortgage Scoop, which is a newsletter where you'll be reporting on other things in the industry, new things in the industry. So we're going to take a little meander today through some of that. But before we dive in, just a reminder to check out the Crispin Commentary and Marketplace. They are a great resource for all sorts of things you may or may not need. I wonder if it's like shopping on Amazon where it's like, okay, I need that, but I'll take that too. Anyway, so go check that out. On Wednesday of this week, we will have the Fed minutes and Jackson Hole Symposium begins. That'll be interesting. Thursday, we get existing home sales. And then Friday, Uncle Jerome Powell will be speaking and letting the world know, maybe, what the Fed's next move might look like. So that'll be interesting, don't you think?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Okay.
agree, definitely.
All together, yes. Uh,
Yes.
also,
But do you think rates will be better? Should I lock? Should I not lock?
I
That's the
know,
question.
I know. Well, you and I have had a little saying for the last 5.5 years. If you see a rate you like, lock it in. I
Mhm.
mean, that might apply here. Just you never know how this is going to go. I mean, even
They
down,
could go the wrong way.
as I'm Googling, all right, what's the latest on, the odds for a Fed rate cut in September? I mean, is it going to be 25 basis points? That seems to be a lock of some sort at this point. Is it going to be 50 basis points? But regardless of what it is, will mortgage rates go up or down? That's the question because it's not necessarily I mean, it's definitely not connected, but sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down when the Feds move. So let's roll some dice, shall we? Flip a coin.
Yeah, no, I was looking at locking a loan yesterday, and we talked about this, but it would have been 31 days. So I was like, I need to wait to the 30th day. But then rates got worse today. But then I learned that the program I was going to lock it on, it doesn't qualify because the condo is not approved for it. So it didn't matter anyway.
Oh, thank God you checked that. Jeez Louise, those pesky little
The
condos.
crazy stuff you got to watch.
Okay, so it is NMLS season. I bet you're all excited. So I don't know. Kevin and I actually we were on the same text this morning from someone else who had a horror story doing their NMLS online. They sat through 4 hours of it last year and then were kicked off with no warning. Apparently their head and shoulders were not straight enough in the frame. So if you are looking for live NMLS classes, we're doing them all over the state of California, just to be clear,
Live in person.
live and in person. Our next one is on Friday in Roseville. That's in the Sacramento area. So if you are interested, let us know. We've been sending, or let's be clear, Kevin has been sending out the flyers for that. So if you need any more information, just ping us, let us know. And with that, let's talk about what's going on in the industry. This week, as with most weeks, I'm like, where do we begin? Where do we begin? What's in the top of your head today, James? What do you think is the most interesting thing going on?
Well, I've been focusing right now on what's going on at the CFPB.
Ah,
And so it looks likely that there will be a 90% cut of CFPB staff. And I've been interviewing people who still, for the moment, work there and folks who had either taken the fork, as they say, or had retired early. And, I'll be publishing my first newsletter edition next week, and I'll have additional details, but I can share a little bit with your audience today in that there's basically no supervisory functions going on at the agency at the moment. Maybe that's not massive breaking news, but there are still regulatory agendas, which is interesting. And yet at the same time, they're removing a lot of the tools that many of the workers would rely on to do some of that regulatory work. So there are open questions about what happens with, say, the LO comp rules, right? And there were some servicing rules as well in there. Looks like a bit more of a deregulatory sort of framework that they've been pushing for. So I'll have additional details about that. So that's an interesting one. Of course, we have also seen a pitter patter of news related to, I guess, I don't know if we still call it the FHFA, but federal housing and,
Hmm.
what's going on with conservatorship. The MBA recently came out with a statement saying, look, we just don't think that Fannie and Freddie should merge. There are valid reasons to consider removing them from conservatorship, and that should still be a long-term goal for the government. But merging the companies is not the approach that they want to take. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And I don't even know how they could do it. There are still two separate charters, one at Fannie, one at Freddie, of course. And you would need an act of Congress, is what I've been told, to actually merge the two companies because you need to modify the charters. So, how and when that happens, I think 2025, which has been the target date for them to quote unquote go public. They are already publicly traded, of course. Not that they're on exchange, but they are publicly traded entities. I still think 2025 is a big long shot. I don't know how they could resolve all of the very complicated thorny matters and even have the requisite studies to assess a potential impact of removing the twins from conservatorship. So those are two of the items that I've been focused on. I'm just, hearing from sources. I've been checking in on my network of sources over the last couple weeks since leaving HousingWire, and just really excited to share more in-depth analysis, insights, and scoops about what I think is going on in the industry right now. And so that's everything from, we talked a little bit about this on the pre-show, Audrey, but I'm hearing that there are more people who are moving for, JVs and MSAs where they're getting leads from the company, but there are a lot of risks associated with doing that, right? It's not always good long-term strategy as an LO. AI underwriting, it works for a lot of companies that have struggled with some underwriting functions, but it's not a panacea. If you're already really good at ops, it's probably not going to move the needle much, right? So there's a lot of stuff always percolating in the industry, and just trying to keep my finger on the pulse of all of it.
Okay, so let's go backwards just for a minute. Let's go back to the CFPB. So
Sure.
as you know, they had 1,732 employees or so back in the day. And then it was cut down to the numbers we heard were around 200. And then
Mhm.
there was a lawsuit from their employees saying, what the heck? And now it sounds like they've been given the go ahead to make those cuts permanent, right? And so what I've seen out of the CFPB is that they are going to be focused on consumer complaints. Like, did someone do something bad to a consumer, and is that consumer filing a complaint? And and so yes, it sounds like they've been sort of hacking away at some of the other regulations they had or the rule making they had done over the last number of years. But what we're also hearing and seeing is that the states are picking up the slack where they are leaving off. And so there is no reason to think that you can let off the gas as far as following the rules or what may be the rules or what could be a pullback or a look back should the administration change in a number of years. And then we do this whipsaw thing again where you go from one way to the other way. And, it's, yeah, it's exhausting for all of us who are
There's a 5-year look back, correct?
that
Correct.
told by yes, that's what Mark McCardle had told us a number of times. So it is
So what you're saying is if you want to commit a crime with the CFPB, you have to do it 1 year before the end of the Democratic term, because then they won't have time to look at it, and then the Republican term will kick them out, all those rules out, and then the Democrats will put it back in, but they only have 5 years to go back. So therefore, you were good because you did it under the Democrats when all the rules.
Sounds like you're good at committing crimes, Kevin. You thought this.
I'm just thinking out this 5-year look back thing. It's kind of,
Yeah.
whiplash.
well, I think that the idea that the Democrats are going to make you follow rules and the Republicans aren't, I don't think that's necessarily the case. That's not the sense I'm getting when I'm listening to different people at the CFPB or, even Bill Pulte. I mean, it doesn't seem like that to me personally. Yes, they pulled back on some things, but it is, it could be argued that some of the things they're pulling back on maybe needed some addressing, like the idea that, like the Townsend case was a good example of that, where maybe that was an overreach.
Yeah.
And right.
There are
So
a lot of people at the agency who feel that Rohit Chopra, the former director of the CFPB, often crossed the line, and that his brand of regulation was sort of the pendulum swinging too far on one side, and now
Uh-huh.
it's swinging too far back on the other. And some feel that they're now in the crosshairs, and that for the current acting director, Russ Vought, that it's personal, and that they're now getting the term is reduction in force, rift as a verb, in part because for him, you know, he saw this as an endemic issue in democratic policy making, and that they're just making up the rules as they see fit as they go, and enforcement by um, just targeting a couple key players and then hoping that everyone else will fall in line is a controversial way of making policy. And so yeah, it's a difficult issue. That the real question will be, will it end up being 200 people, in which I could still absolutely see the agency functioning. Obviously, there would be a much smaller footprint, and they would have to rely heavily on state agencies carrying out a lot of their missions, and they're not as well funded. Their interpretations may differ on certain regulations, or there is the 200 versus five guys in a phone, as it's been described. And under those settings, I don't think there's much regulation of any kind happening. I don't see how they could carry out the mission or even fulfill a lot of the statutory duties. Like, for example, the HMDA team, the data team in mortgage markets alone is more than five people, right? So it's not an easy, clean answer, but I think there will have to be a moment where people figure out who's going to be in charge.
yeah. I mean, to be honest, when you said it said CFPB director, I'm like, who is that now? I mean, like it changed so many times that I gave up on. I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna let the dust settle, see where we land, and then like,
Well, it was almost Jonathan McKernan, who would have been a very popular choice because he's seen as sort of although he's conservative, he's a very, I think, well respected, not a firebrand. He's not an ideologue. He's a classic regulator, and it didn't end up happening, and he ended up going to Treasury where he's working with Secretary Bessent. So for now, it appears to be Vote, and his term as acting will either need to be continued or they'll need to find someone else because I believe he only has 200 something days before they can make a final decision on that.
maybe. Um,
So much fun, huh?
so okay, speaking of lawsuits at agencies, did you see that the Fannie employees who got fired, they're all suing?
Yes, yes, I've reported extensively on this.
Right?
Sorry?
There's two separate lawsuits.
Yes, they're in two different jurisdictions, but it's all related to the same, I think, core case. And that case is effectively that there is an allegation from Fannie Mae that there were workers of Indian origin who had been committing basically like a fraud scheme through charitable gift matching. I don't
Hmm.
know the details whether that happened, but there are other companies that have also reported similar scams happening. So Apple's probably the best known example back in January. In one case, I believe out of Virginia, it's 41 employees are alleging that many of them didn't even donate more than a couple dollars, and there's no fraud, like there's no evidence that they've done anything, and this is just political retribution against people who are of foreign origin. But again, like there are other cases out there in which a nonprofit from people from a particular region in India are associated with that have you know other allegations, and you know there are Democrats who are behind some of the prosecuting actions there, so it may not be a political thing at all.
It'll be interesting to see this play itself out. Apparently, no evidence has been presented to the people who were fired, and that's part of their gripe.
That's
It
what I've heard. Yeah.
show us what the problem was because we don't agree. So again, all unfolding before our very eyes, keeping us, giving us something to think about every single week. Okay, so there has been a conversation about merging Fannie and Freddie, and both Bill Pulte, the acting or the director, not acting, the director of the CF or of the F, good God, too many acronyms. Uh,
Rural housing, as he likes to say.
and both and him and President Trump have both called it the Great American Mortgage Corporation, GAM, GAMIC, GAMIC. I'm
Emma?
GAMIC.
Emma.
Oh, anyway. Okay, just playing with the acronym, see if it has any rhythm there. But no, it doesn't. So what are your thoughts on Fannie Freddie merging and them becoming one? I mean, there's a lot of us who are like, all right, why aren't they one? I know they have two separate charters, but can't you just executive order that away and move on? So tell us what you know about that.
So, as I mentioned earlier in the program, I don't see a legal mechanism right now for Bill Pulte or the other administration point people being able to merge the companies. This is a legal matter that Congress, which established the conservatorship, would need to figure out. Now, could two companies be separated or removed from conservatorship rather, and then there be some sort of a merger afterward? I think that's probably achievable. I don't know what timeline. I think you run into certain questions about what are we gaining here? Are we looking for more innovation? Are we going to find more innovation when we have one GSE rather than two? I mean, there are other schools of thought out there that might consider even having an additional GSE, right? Maybe you want more competition, in fact. But it is also true, of course, as you know, that their products are very similar. And it's unclear whether the Trump administration would have you know, particular aims toward pricing and creating kind of a fair market situation. You don't want Fannie and Freddie, I would guess, participating in the primary market. So that would be something they would need to, have have like very clear guardrails around. I don't know a lot of people in the industry who want to see a merged Fannie and Freddie, but again, a lot of this is pretty new, and I'm open to the prospect that there are really good reasons to do it. I just don't immediately see a lot of value at the moment.
So let's take
You know,
the LO perspective. Kevin, our listener,
well,
chime in with your thoughts on this because I'll just we have two entities that do very much the same thing. And so that means we have double the, building space, double the employees, and I don't see much innovation coming out of Fannie and Freddie anyway. There was some talk, I think, that Freddie was going to introduce a second mortgage program, which I haven't heard about that in months. And I really didn't understand what the point was going to be anyway, because I don't think they had any innovative guidelines that were going to be different than something we already have access to. So, again, I don't know what the advantage would be, but I also don't know what the disadvantage would be. And I'm curious what the dollars and cents would look like. And so I'm just curious, what does everyone else
well,
think?
here's my thoughts on it. I like the innovation part of having multiple companies, and I would even do more than two. And I'm thinking back to like toothpaste. You know, you're either going to buy Colgate or Crest. They're both owned by the same company. You're going to buy Cheer or Tide when you buy your detergent. They're the same company. They have a reason why they present two different options for the consumers because they can innovate differently and they can test different things differently. And if one doesn't work, the company as a whole doesn't get hurt. So if they were to come out with more brands of great mortgage associate, what is it, Great American Mortgage Company. Um, you know, who knows? Maybe they come up with some ways of doing more products that we could use and get more stuff because, like right now, Fannie and Freddie don't touch non-QM. Maybe
Well,
Yeah.
they should.
I could it be argued that the third entity is already the private market, and they have been very innovative in a way that
True.
Freddie have never been innovative. I mean, we have a 30-year fix, and we have a 30-year fix, and we have a 30-year fix, and
And a 15 that no one seems to take.
well, when the yield curve's inverted and the pricing for a 15 years now more than it would be for a 30 becomes way less attractive. Peter put a comment in that, and he says that new restaurants shouldn't open because there are already places to eat. And I agree that I love competition, but I don't necessarily know that it's going to come from a GSE situation. I don't know. I mean, again, I'm open to it, and I don't have a strong opinion about which way we should go. But as far as looking to the GSEs for innovation, I haven't seen tons of that or any that I can think of. Okay, well, actually, let me. I actually heard Bill Pulte being interviewed on MBS Highway by Barry Habib last week, and it was very interesting. He was asked what are the changes to FHFA since you were in charge. He said 18,000 people are back to the office. So that was a little jaw dropping for me. I had no idea that their numbers were that large. I did not realize how many people work there. Good.
You say 1,800 or 18,000?
1,000.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I said. Makes the CFPB look like nothing. They are looking at the LLPAs, but he definitely would not commit to a timeline, whether it was really going to be something that they would address. So he knows that that's really what we're interested in. A lot of us is you could affect a lot of change and do a lot to help rates if those LLPAs weren't so egregious, and you could get back part of the market share that they've lost from LOs like me who price an investment property with the GSEs and with a non-QM loan, and 99.99 times out of 100 for me, the non-QM is a better deal for my client, better rates, much easier guidelines, much less risk of so many things from our perspective. Anyway, they have prepays that are built in a lot of cases, so you don't have to worry about EPO so much. Okay, back to Bill. He said they're looking at appraisals, they're looking at credit scoring, although when he made comments about Vantage, I actually wondered whether he really understood that they are owned by the three credit bureaus. That he made a comment that made me wonder. I'm not entirely sure. And he said that he believed that they would remain in conservatorship, but with the president in control. Again, I'm like, okay. He was talking about their title pilot program expanding. And so they've got a program. I started reading about this. We don't have it, where they are experimenting with doing a streamlined title search so that it's less costly. And when he says expanding, I think he means they're adding more lenders who are testing it. Again, I have mixed feelings about that. I mean, I think title insurance is terribly expensive and a huge burden, but I also don't want to give up the protections that my clients have. Like, I don't want some terrible sloppy title search and then they end up in trouble down the road.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So curious about that. He also said that interest rates should be 3% lower, which was shocking to hear in whatever month we're in 2025. Holy guacamole.
I just don't see that.
And I don't want it. Like,
No.
want it because I don't want to do all the business in a year and then have no business for the next 3 years. That's what happens when you have those kind of interest rate drops. So that does not help, in my opinion. Okay, crypto. This was really, really interesting. He says that we're going to be able to use crypto in mortgages, like with the GSEs, like within, I mean, he said quick days, weeks, like short amount of time. And so that conversation.
What do you do with this crypto other than down payment that we can already do?
So again, a little light on details, right? But in general, he was saying this, and I'm like, okay, well, we can use crypto in mortgages right now, but I think it had more to do with how it's liquidated, et cetera, and making it just easier. So, and then the other thing though that was interesting to me, whatever you feel about him, I felt like he actually cared about the industry. He definitely mentioned helping LOs and he's aware of that. He seemed concerned. And so, whether we're going to agree with the methods or where we end up, I don't know, but it was really an interesting conversation. If you have a chance to listen to it, I would highly recommend it. I think I'm going to go back and listen again, but that was that was kind of an overview of his talking points, but Anything, guys, that jumps out at you that is worth further conversation on?
I I'm surprised that we're only finally just getting to the LLPAs. It's been an issue for quite some time. I don't think the current framework justifies the cost. Um, I would have liked to have seen them already tweaked months ago. That's just me. On the crypto thing, I don't know what problem it's solving for. This seems like a political red meat thing. I don't understand who would even use it. I would worry about, and I also am an idiot for not embracing crypto back in 2013 when a buddy of mine was mining them in a condo and probably knocking out the power grid. But it it is it is a very volatile asset, and I struggle to see the actual use cases there. The underlying technology of blockchain, as Figure and a couple of others have figured out, is really compelling, and I could see that. I would like, if we're going to have a merged Fannie and Freddie, I would like to see it more innovative, even though I don't expect that to be what happens if that were to occur. I would like to see them being more aggressive with title insurance. It's the cost is crazy for the actual service provided. I would like to see them doing more practical things like, why don't we have ADU financing? Like, that's insane. We could do it tomorrow if they really wanted to. So I'd like to see them take a more proactive approach. I have concerns about some of the methodologies that have been used. I've spoken to people who were high up at Fannie and Freddie and other companies that didn't even know the Vantage Score thing was happening until they checked Twitter that day. That's not how you do policy. That's crazy. But yeah, I mean, look, I've met with Bill Pulte. I think he is committed to making a difference. I would like to see more of the managerial functions rather than kind of the political, like that ad on Fannie and Freddie. I shared on LinkedIn earlier today. It's basically a political ad. Like, why don't we fix the actual problems that are occurring here instead of this political pandering that seems to take up most of the oxygen in the room? So that would be my critique. But I would love to see more innovation. I just don't see it from one company, especially trying to merge two really complicated entities, figuring out regulatory risk, figuring out policy making. Like, it's just a quagmire.
So we have a comment from a listener who says that would never work. I worked at Fannie Mae. It operates like a government, very inefficient. Getting changes approved takes an act of Congress, probably literally.
Yeah.
Listen to this though. This is great. It'd be trying to merge London and Italy as one country. I mean, that kind of tells you everything you need to know. Freddie is by far more flexible and innovative. So that's an interesting comment from someone who worked there. So I appreciate like the inside, view into what it really is like. And then Peter had a comment, private market has the primary obligation to shareholder profits. As a GSE, there historically has been pressure to serve the public. Do I have it wrong? And I would agree with him, except if you look at the profits of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac quarter after quarter after quarter over the last 3 years, while we are all just like scraping to survive, and they are posting billions and billions and billions of dollars in profit. So, I'd like to think that that's what they're there for, but it's been a little rough. And again, to your point, James, like that was during another administration too. So it's like it's not like one is somehow, figuring this out and solving for it. It's it is complicated, and but it does impact all of us. I mean, it definitely impacts us because these we are, I'm closing these loans too, and it's a lot.
To
Yeah.
Peter's
The other
point,
thing,
yeah, sorry, go ahead, Kevin.
I was gonna say the other thing too about the private non-QM stuff, that there's such a small piece of the overall mortgage that are closed. And if any one non-QM lender was to go bankrupt, it's not gonna blow up the world. Versus Fannie and Freddie, it's so large that if it was to get into trouble, it brings everybody else down, as we've seen in the past.
Well, during lockdown, we saw it when non-QM and jumbo disappeared almost overnight.
Mm-hmm.
They left people hanging all over the place. So at that point, I was so convinced that we could not survive without Fannie Freddie.
But same thing happened in 2008.
What?
2008, same thing. We lost all the jumbo and all the private investors disappeared. And all we had was Fannie Freddie.
So I don't know how to solve for that. I don't, because we want that private industry and and again, the costs and the rates, etc. are, I have a 1099 loan right now, and the rate on that is the same as it was on a conventional mortgage that I just closed on a purchase with someone who had an almost 800 credit score, and I think the LTV was, I don't know, 50 something percent. So, as
Oh.
far as having LLPA hits, I mean, we were at a minimum on those. So the GSEs are not beating out for full doc, the whole appraisals, the whole bit, are not beating out a 1099 loan where all you're showing is the 1099. Do you see where I'm going with this? Like, um,
Yeah, seems off. Yeah.
okay, total silence. Kevin, are you there?
Yeah, no, I'm here. I was reading a couple of comments there. Sorry. It's hard to read and watch and talk at the same time. Yeah, no, it's an interesting little perplexity with such a large entity. And again, they do have somewhat the public interest in mind, but lately they seem to have their own interest in mind, which amount of profits they're making. But we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, those
Well,
LO,
then the big question is, James, do you think you would invest in Fannie and Freddie if they go public?
I don't think I'd be legally permitted to, because I have the potential to influence markets with my reporting. So that would be something I'd probably be barred from. The SEC usually takes a dim view of reporters who are owning stock of companies they cover. But I mean, having said all that, I do think I don't know that there is anyone who sincerely believes if we do release Fannie and Freddie from conservatorship, they are valued at 500 billion or a trillion or whatever that ends up being a very, very large number, that there isn't like that if they did collapse, if they did go bankrupt, that we wouldn't rescue them. Like the American public would not have to
Mhm.
step in, not have a housing market with Fannie and Freddie, which is, more than half the housing market MBSs that collapse, right? Like, so I think this is almost like a phony conversation in the first place. Like they're way too big to fail. So yeah, I just don't see it.
so I read an opinion piece that was talking about what a terrible thing it would be if they let the Fannie Freddie shareholders cash in on this. It was by Scott Susan. Um, anyway, he pointed out that on the day that President Trump took office, the stock price for Fannie Mae was $1.39, and it is now just under $10 a share. So certainly these conversations have increased the value of their stock. And so I don't know, we'll see. I mean, who the hell knows?
That's almost a 10-time return.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
the expectation for the hedge fund owners of the initial stock is that it would reach $30 before,
five.
um,
This
yeah,
guy's 35.
35. Yeah.
So
And what was it when it was taken over by the government? Do you have any memory of that?
wait, back in the day, it might say here. Uh, I don't know. Anyway, it will
Interesting question.
really highlight, um, how much money they had lost, how badly they were
And
made,
then
how they
and
were.
how many of those owners originally back in 2008 actually still hold those shares? Or has it been people that have bought it as speculative in the meantime? So, who cares?
In other news, I'm always ranting and raving about how, this affordability thing has a lot to do with people's lifestyles these days and less to do with the fact that we have, 6.5% interest rates. So Doug Wall, who is an LO, it looks like, at Guild Mortgage, posted on LinkedIn the following, which I thought was really interesting. And his sources are Experian, NerdWallet, Bankrate, LendingTree, Edmunds, but the average car payment in the US is $745 a month. And this, I have been saying, how many times, Kevin, have I said this? These car payments that are crazy, right? 20% of all car loans have a payment of over $1,000 a month. The average interest rate is 6.73%. So slightly more than you'd pay for a mortgage right now. The average loan term is 69 months, which is 5 3/4 years. That's a very long time for a car loan. 22% of all car loans have a term of 84 months, and the average amount financed is $42,388.
Wow.
I these are astounding numbers to me, but it just backs up what I've been, ranting about forever. I also thought it was interesting that number 1 and number 2 and 4 and 5 cars sold in America are trucks. I mean, I was just in the UK. Guess what? You don't see much pickup trucks. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. And then also, lest you are seeing the ICE reporting on delinquency rates in the US, which popped up a fair amount percentage wise month over month. If you look at the graph, we have been so below average for delinquencies for so long that so when it's saying that we're up to 3.49%, and remember that most of that is FHA and VA, which had a foreclosure moratorium until just a few months ago. So, if you have people who are freaking out because they saw a headline saying that the delinquency rates went way up, that's a little color around that. So you have some explanation.
So you're saying, wait, how much did it go up by because of ICE?
Please hold. Let me get my actual numbers. I think it was like 4. Please hold. 14.5% month over month, but again, like it's at 3.
It's such a low number.
It's sort of like that headline. Remember when the headline was foreclosure rates up 175% and they were still below 1% and like historic lows. So again, there are some people who are waiting to buy because they think there's this huge crash coming, and based on availability and demand, we're not seeing it.
Yeah, I actually like where we're at in the market right now because my clients come to me, I pre-approve them, they make an offer, and if they don't get it on the first one, they get it on the second one. It's that easy. Versus before, I'd have 10 clients come to me and they'd all make 3, 4, 5 offers and then they'd give up. And maybe one of the 10 might go into contract. And that was a whole lot of work to get one person into contract. Now it's like you get them, okay, this is solid. You're going to close it.
It's a tricky situation because on the one hand, you do want to have a more healthy level of inventory. We are seeing pockets of the country where inventory is improving. And so you're seeing more balance, and particularly in what we call the Sun Belt, right? Kind of the South, the Southwest, Florida and Texas in particular have seen a lot more, but a lot of that product is condos, right? You're going to have a
Yeah.
lot of issues with insurance. You're going to have issues with
HOA issues.
yeah,
Got
I
that one
mean,
today. That
God
was
forbid
my
you have
client
to get
today.
a Fannie loan on a condo somewhere in Florida, right? I mean, that sounds very difficult. A lot of lenders now are just pulling out of that entirely. And then you look elsewhere and you think, okay, where are we seeing the distress and how bad is it? And what's interesting is because of the new loss mitigation waterfall rules in effect for FHA, a lot of borrowers they're missing that one payment, but then they get right back on track the next month. And then now, again, this is not to suggest that we don't have potential for some cracks here, but we're not seeing the serious delinquency in the 20s and 30s, and these people are eventually getting foreclosed on. The actual foreclosure rate remains relatively low. Now, one could say that maybe that means that the rules are too strong and they're too heavily in favor of the borrower for a healthy market. But then, like where are they going to go? What are they going to do? It's not like the rental market is very forgiving right now. There's not a lot of options. So you do run into sort of the social safety net element of housing. It's a complicated thing. It touches on politics, it touches on wealth, it touches on the economics of industry professionals. I don't have an answer, but I will say the GSE conventional mortgages remain at like I think it's under 2%. It's stupid low. And so if you did get a loan from Fannie or Freddie in 2020, 2021, you're probably in the twos and you probably will not sell that house for a decade or more. But if you bought an FHA or bought a house with an FHA loan in 23, 24, 25, there's probably, I'd say one out of every four are already running into issues. And that's because all the costs are high. They also bought that pickup truck that Audrey doesn't like, right? So it's everything is expensive and they just don't have a lot of wiggle room.
I think that for those of us who went through the meltdown and saw how that played out, where the borrowers were there was everything was in favor of the lenders. And then we went through through lockdown, where we had the CARES Act that gave us a mechanism to help people and keep them in their homes, where most of them came out of that healthy and whole and intact. I mean, I know that for myself, I much prefer at least giving someone the opportunity to have a crisis and get past it versus saying, screw you, you're out of your house and, figure it out. And to your point, rents are crazy. I mean, they're really expensive. I mean, Kevin has talked about this a couple of times that he has a client he ran numbers for on a purchase and it was cheaper. In what town was that, Kevin? These are not cheap places.
This is down near San Jose, California.
Super expensive, and it was cheaper for them to buy than to rent. What they were paying, their rent was more than their mortgage payment was going to be. So again, we all need to be really running those numbers and making sure that we're doing the math for our clients because they don't know how to do it themselves. And so yeah, it's crazy, crazy. I thought it was interesting. Cotality came out with a report and they were talking about Gen Z. So I just want to remind you that Gen Z, because I looked it up because I couldn't remember what the bottom age was. Actually, I couldn't remember what the top age was either. So basically, I didn't know what the age was. But 13 to 28 years. So, I take this with a grain of salt because I don't know a lot of 13-year-olds who are buying houses. And I'm curious as to who they, what part of that demographic they were really talking to. But there were a few interesting things. 63% of Gen Zs don't feel informed about the home buying process. So that's one thing. And we know that every time that we hear any sort of survey about how much money does the average consumer think that you have to put down, most of them still think that you have to put down
20%.
Yep. Okay. So a third of those surveyed said that they would not work with the same LO again, and that trust was the big issue. Like they didn't trust them. So apparently there was
Wow.
a relationship that was being built that was strong enough to help them feel confident that they were actually being told the truth, which that's
Good thing they didn't. That's because they didn't ask our clients.
so it's problematic though. I mean, it's really and I wonder for some of these companies who are really going towards, and we're going to get to tech in a minute, but going towards a model that is less human and more tech and more analytics and how much time, it'll be this could be part of that problem. But 71% of these Gen Zers or Zoomers, which I think that name is funny. That's why I said it. So they want 71% want human and technology blended together. And I feel like we're hearing this more and more and more from people is this idea that just get rid of the LO, they're not worth anything anyway, and just go to technology. Even the young people, that's not what they want if they know any better, right? There are some people who think that they know everything. What do they need any of us for? I mean, what could we possibly bring to the table with our, I don't know, between Kevin and I think we're at what, 1,200 years in the mortgage business doing loans. So anyway, I just thought the whole thing was interesting, but it's an opportunity for us to really stand out from the crowd and make sure that we are in touch with our borrowers. Like I got a call yesterday from someone who was referred to me by another client who for decades, they've been my clients. And God bless them. Every time they describe me, apparently they use the word magic. And so these people, I'm meeting with them today in person in my office. These are highly educated professionals who want in person in my office, and they're going to buy a place before they sell the one that they're in. And we're going to work it out today. Right. And then I'm leaving from here and I'm going to drive across a bridge in the bay and I'm going to go to a signing and I'm signing loan docs for my clients who, by the way, are, God, what would they be? I guess they're millennials. Anyway, and they are there. I mean, I'm on the phone with them so much, like so much. And they have a million questions. They love it that they have a resource. So be that for your clients, right? I mean, Kevin, you're having the same experience. I mean,
And no, I had the same one I was telling you yesterday, where I had the client who was looking at buying a place that was a rehab project, and I was the only one who told them that, dude, you don't want to get this. This isn't a quick and easy $250,000 rehab job. This is going to hit you $1 million that you don't have. You want to walk away from this. And he had been told by so many other people that, oh yeah, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. And I was the only one who told him, you don't want to do this one. And he realized he could trust me. And he came from a culture that didn't trust financial advice from professionals. And he was like, no, you were really good about your advice. You always looked out for me. So that was kind of cool.
So that situation, so Kevin isn't telling you the whole thing. There's even more to it, which is great. So first of all, I think that when you first started talking to him, someone had told them it was 100 grand, right? You buy this
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, it's like teetering on the side of a cliff in San Francisco and has how many steps to get to the property?
92 steps up and 93 steps down. Whichever way you wanted to go was over 90 steps.
Yeah. So
Wow.
so crazy property needed.
Imagine taking out the garbage every week.
Oh my God, please kill me or bringing in anything. Anyway, but Kevin went way above and beyond. And didn't you bring contractors out to look at it?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I had my own contractors come take a look at it. And they to a man were like, Kevin, like, this is $1 million project.
Right. There's the number. So, the buyers were being told 100 grand. If they buy into that and believe that, talk about trust, right? If they
Yeah.
believe that, then they're just toast later. Can you imagine you get into that project and then get the real numbers and everyone is screwed? The buyers are screwed. The lenders sorry, I should use another word, but anyway, that one's the most accurate.
Yeah.
Bottom line is, and then here's the kicker. So not only did a buyer that Kevin met through that process close with him, he also just got another referral the other day from that realtor, right, Kevin? Tell him.
Yeah, same realtor because he liked the amount of work I put into the deal.
Yeah.
And he referred me a close friend of his. That was even better.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so, okay, somebody says that you sound like, what's 30, Harry?
Yeah, someone knows the property.
What?
Someone knows the property I'm talking about.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, I see, I see. Okay, gotcha. Anyway, bottom line is you can take situations like that where, Kevin thought, okay, well, maybe I closed this deal on this property. And it didn't happen because he gave great advice and then it morphed into two other deals. I mean, hello. Does it get better than that, right?
Take that every day.
What?
I'll take that every day.
I know.
I do think it speaks a little bit to meeting people where they are. And I find that a lot of LOs who tend to be a little older, and it's no secret that the mortgage industry in general is a little older than certainly the Gen Zers, the Zoomers, if you will. And they're not on TikTok and they're not, engaging with people and starting the conversation about education and doing their own lead gen, instead of waiting for real estate agents to spin you deals, be proactive, be on TikTok. There's so much misinformation. I go on there occasionally. I'm blown away by all the absolute crap, the untrue crap that people put out there. They're filming nonsense in their cars. They're talking about things that
Yeah,
just
yeah.
true. And so someone should be taking that as an opportunity to be the expert, to show, what actually, like you guys do this all day. You guys are loan technicians, you're people who are in the trenches, so to speak. And I think that's a good way to build that trust because there is a lack of trust generationally speaking. I have my kids, they're former nannies, they're 23 and 20, and I ask them about buying a house or, thinking about the future of building wealth and home ownership. And they're like, what's that? Like, we're never going to get an opportunity to do that. So, okay, what do you do? Okay, hey, let's start budgeting. Let's get you on one of those apps where you can start planning. And what's the next major purchase? It's a car. Okay, how much is that? 10,000? Great. Let's start here. There are ways to do it, but you have to not hope or expect that that deal is going to pan out in 6 months or even a year, but maybe 5 years down the line. And I think a lot of LOs right now are looking at their own pipeline and thinking, I'd rather just try to focus on refis and what's in front of me than thinking long term, very long term about sustainable lead generation because that's a big investment that may not pay off in the next year or two. So, but I do think that's a more sustainable future if you're willing to do it.
So James, I suspect you are quite a bit younger than both Kevin and I.
I'll be 39 in a couple days.
I'd like to point out that I am substantially younger than Kevin. Regardless, we come from a generation where we were never to show off. It was bad form. You don't promote yourself, you don't show off. You're not hanging out the door trying to get someone's attention for the most part, or that was bad, right? The other thing too, that people who are not from the LO part of the industry is we have huge jobs. So we are navigating the process. I am taking phone calls nonstop from clients or text or whatever, updating everyone in the transaction. I have to know how to fix for plan A, plan B, C, plan D. I mean, let me tell you something. I don't love marketing. I don't feel comfortable promoting. None of that is easy for me. And so, I mean, I've always had a referral based business. All of my business comes from that. And so, for some of us, the idea of, putting ourselves out there, and I obviously, I've gotten used to it. But when we started the show 5.5 years ago, I mean, Kevin had to bully me into getting a camera and having my face here. I did not feel comfortable. I didn't want to do it. It was rough. And so, I mean, again, our generation, I mean, a lot of us just wanted to do loans. We didn't want to have to do all this other crazy, but we're embracing it little bit by little bit, right?
Little bit by little bit.
Yeah, but
Hey,
and
I
You know,
got
business evolves, business changes. When I came up as a journalist, I was covering capital offenses, drug crimes, murders, things like that. I never thought that I'd be covering,
how'd
libel.
you get into how'd you get in the mortgage world?
It's a long story, but I used to be running an investigative news team at the Star Ledger in New Jersey back in the day, and we covered, mostly political corruption and crime. And every 6 months, they would cut additional staff, and they would say the page views are just not strong enough. And I'm like, well, we do 8 stories a year. Like, this isn't a page view kind of team. And I grew frustrated. And a friend of mine worked at a company called The Real Deal. Some of you may know it. I don't know. It's a trade publication. They cover real estate, but more luxury real estate and commercial real estate. And I got a job there as an editor, and I spent 5 years there, learned the business of real estate, and then I got an opportunity to join HousingWire, and I knew what a mortgage was and how it worked, but mostly on the commercial side. But when you're covering luxury real estate, the mortgage is usually a secondary consideration if it's there at all, and so mortgage didn't really come up all that much, but I started to get into it, and I realized how complex and interesting it was, and how it's in a lot of ways kind of the center of the deal, right? Because for 95% of people, there is no deal without the mortgage.
Yep.
And so yeah, I've been managing the folks at or until very recently the folks at HousingWire, and I just loved getting into it and talking to people every day about challenges, successes, how they're doing it, and you can tell a story about America through the mortgage business, I think.
well, it would be, if you were to do a comparison, it's like if you expected someone to go get the news story, run the printing presses, be the cameraman, pick up the donuts in the morning. Like, we're supposed to process, be the assistant, be the lead generator, make sure we're do follow up. It's a lot. So, and again, all
Depends on the shop, I think. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, certainly it's a big job.
the tech was supposed to change all that. And what it's done is it's added layers and layers and layers of additional complexity and
Mhm.
additional things that people think that we should do or collect. So it is so complicated. And again, I think finding some balance so that you're doing what you're good at and what you're happy with and being able to find resources to help you with the rest. So, I have really great back end help now. And I only say back end because people don't see them as much, not that they're less important. And so that's life changing, but that's hard to get. Like finding good processors, not easy. Finding good assistants, not easy. Finding ops that are willing to, work with you so that you can close a deal really fast and win the deal over someone else. It's rough. So anyway, it is for those of us who've been around forever, it's most of us I mean, we're here because we love it and we love our clients and we take really good care of them and we take pride in what we do and how we educate people and we meet them where they are, to your point. So I think the more professional we can be, the better. Let's take a few moments and talk about what you're seeing out there around tech, James.
Yeah, I mean, tech is in an interesting place, and I think a lot of people they naturally think about the mortgage tech spaces like Cotality, formerly CoreLogic. There's ICE, of course, and there's a couple big companies. The vast majority of vendors, though, are just scraping by. and they're just trying to get, an extra client and just trying to get over the mountain. And I think that's very representative of mortgage in general, in that if you look at the statistics, most of the folks on the origination side are also in a similar place where like I just need like a fifth loan a month, right? And then things will be a lot better. And so you have a lot of companies now in that space that are starting to run out of runway.
Mhm.
And it's hard to raise money right now. It's very difficult if you
Very
are
challenging.
very
In all
challenging.
industries, actually.
Yes, yes. And there are a couple that are able to raise money, but they're always, AI and who
Mhm.
I hear a lot about companies that others say is vaporware, others say, like they haven't actually unveiled a product yet. But it's something that they're raising money on somehow, right? And so it's an interesting moment. I sense that there's a lot of what I call tech fatigue out there. And it's just like, okay, I need to get this new product, and now I have to figure out how to implement that and make sure it works with my existing workflow. Or even worse, do I have to re-examine my entire workflow now because now I have this function? There is some frustration, at least on kind of the more executive level, about the minimum seat requirements at ICE for Encompass and just all the associated costs. These are not the cheapest products out there by any stretch of the imagination. And I mean, everyone's looking for a silver bullet, but I don't think that there really is one.
Yeah.
And if you look at the cost to originate, it remains around the 12K mark, even though profitability is starting to improve again. The MBA just came out with their quarterly profitability survey, and I believe it was $800 and change. That was the average IMB profit per loan over the second quarter, and that's very encouraging. But again, I think tech is still too expensive, too difficult to implement, and people are frustrated.
Well, I think when I think about things like we're spending zillions of dollars to have an AI model read a purchase contract, well, the regulators are going to make sure, I'm held responsible as the licensee for everything in the transaction. Let's start there. And then the as far as it takes me 10 seconds to scan a real estate contract and figure out what the deal is, and I need to know it anyway. So I'm like, oh, God, is all of it worth it? Is it really going to help the consumer in the end? I don't know. I mean, some of it's great. Again, it'll be interesting to see it all shake down and see where we land, because we went way, like I'd walk into a meeting, they're like, and here are 8 or 10 different widgets that are going to help you do all these things, and I'm like, holy crap, how am I going to fit that into my day? Because I have to learn all of them. And all these tech companies, some of them don't get it, that it needs to be Apple phone, easy to use, instead of some complicated gyration that takes a whole training team to implement. So,
Yeah.
anyway, it's complicated. But again, what helps our clients? How does it help our clients? That's all I care about.
And
Which,
keeps their costs down.
what?
And keeps their costs down.
Yeah. Well, right. And then, by the way, I mean, when we're talking about costs, I've asked many, many times, all right, who's looking at these P&Ls from these IMBs, and how many airplane parts are included in that cost to manufacture a loan is what I'd like to know. So it's complicated out there. So James, can you put that on your list of things to look for? I'd like to see some P&Ls. What are the actual costs? What are we being told they're paying for? Because I have some ideas that maybe it's more than, paper.
Yeah, definitely on the list. Yeah, I think generally speaking, the tech space and mortgage has been poorly covered. And that's because I think there are a lot of people who just don't really understand it. And I've been learning as I go, when I talk to people, even in the mortgage vendor space, I ask them and they go, do you know what's real? Like, I heard this about this company. Like, do you have any idea if that's a viable product? And I'm like, I thought you would know. Like, you do this every day, right? And so I do feel like mostly the reporting that I see is this company is integrated with this company, and the person writing it, that's all they understood. They don't know any more of it. So then, the rest of it is really pay to play. And then you don't really have a lot of, I think, accurate, unbiased information out there on what's going on with these companies and these services and like what does work, right? And so it's something that I hope to achieve with this new venture. And I just want to bring more credible reporting to, we're talking like a at least a $10 billion space per year, right? So, I mean, ICE alone is probably a couple billion there. So it's not without consequence. And I just think that we need better reporting, and that's what I hope to bring. So if anyone here, the 80 something folks that we've had here checking it out, have any suggestions, please send it over. I'd be happy to look it over and talk to you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And if you are in the Danville, California area on Wednesday night, there is an event.
That's tomorrow night.
Oh God, is it really?
Yeah.
Put on by East Bay Camp at, I think it's Auberge, Auburn. I don't know.
It's Auburn Lodge.
It's the wine bar.
Yeah.
There's
5:30 to 7:30 or 8:30, 5:30, 8:30. And then if you're in Roseville and you want to take a class near Sacramento, we're doing live in-person class in Roseville, California tomorrow. Or no, Friday. Thank you.
All right. With all that being said, guys, I'm going to tell you what I say every week, which is there are lots of loans out there, lots of them. They are not falling out of the sky. They're not banging you upside the head just out of nowhere. You have to go find them, but they exist and they're really fun to put together, and people are really grateful when you're done, and it makes me smile. So go get them, fund them, make another life happy, and we will see you next week. Thanks, James, so much. Thank you.